Hi, my loves. Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit. I am just so inspired and lit up by that conversation with Sarah. Really, really cool. And the spirits that came through today were in a very parallel vein to the conversation, which usually is how it works. And just a thought on that. I was talking about this in my mediumship circle this morning, how we create appointments and people in the spirit world do as well. And so if they know that I'm talking about activism on X day and time, the right spirit that has a message in a parallel vein is like, that's my appointment slot. I will be showing up for that. And so when you book sessions with a medium, know that your past loved ones on the other side are like, we will be showing up at that time. It sets the intention and it creates sacred space with your ancestors and your angels and your guides. So I find that just really beautiful. And I find that as part of the explanation for the synchronicities between the episode content and the spirits that come through. So I want to start, as always, with our angel messages. Take what resonates with you, leave the rest. I always say that because it's so important. You'll know if a message is for you. And a lot of people listen to this podcast, so you don't need to take any messages that are not for you. But if you know somebody who could benefit from the messages, please, please, please share the podcast, share the podcast, share the podcast. So the energy right now feels a little bit dense and all over the place. And I see a staircase and I feel this theme of ascension and growing and just focusing on what is the next step, one step in front of the next. It feels like if we're trying to get too big picture, if we're trying to predict the future, if we're trying to have all the answers, we are going to feel overwhelmed, bogged down, dense. Just one foot in front of the next up the staircase. And when you look backwards at how far you've climbed, you'll be so impressed with yourself. But at this moment, just focus 1 foot. What is in your control and how can you do the best with that and release the rest? I also was seeing an interesting symbol of a sunrise, but the sunrise was made out of a sunflower. And so sunrise is the symbol of the sun became a sunflower. And so sunrise is my symbol for a new energetic chapter, a new dawn, a new day, the light coming back after a time period that was more dense or dark or shadowy or unknown. And then a sunflower. And it's funny, it's a funny synchronicity because Sarah's a Leo and sunflowers are the flower of Leo energy. But sunflower is tied to resilience, to always growing towards the light. Sunflowers are so strong. Wherever you plant them, they will grow towards the light. They will bounce back. They stay shining. They stay in that beautiful yellow energy. And it's just a symbol that you're stronger for what you've gone through. You are resilient for what you've gone through. And in this new chapter, in this new dawn, in this new day, all of that sunflower energy is here to support you. Just like we have animal guides that can come through, we also have plant guides. And so just like we have spirit guides, we have plant guides. And sunflower is a plant guide around this week of beauty, resilience, and creativity, and always, always, always doing your best to grow towards the light. I feel a lot of crown chakra activity, which is very common, of overthinking, second guessing, getting in your head. And this is very much tied to that earlier message of just stay in the present, stay with what's in your control. I feel like a lot of people might not know what to think or what's real or what's not, or just feel a little mentally overwhelmed or like their thoughts are going to dark places. And I do feel like the energy right now is collectively dialed up in an intense way. So again, just come back to the here and now as much as possible. 1 foot in front of the next. Just do whatever you need to do to fill up your cup and to take care of yourself. And what's not in your immediate control, don't let the overthinking or the inner villain voice try to take you down. Then I saw a witch's hat and I was like, I'm waiting for the witch's hat symbol. And it sure enough came up. And the witch's hat is my symbol for, of course, witch energy, which is remembering our power, healing our witch wound, connecting spiritually, connecting to the land, connecting with our voice, and connecting with that archetype of the witch that lives in every single one of us in some way or another. And when I saw the witch's hat, I felt joy and I felt a need for community. And it feels like for a lot of you in the hummingbird community, there's something here about dabbling in it, being curious about it, sort of doing your own solo practices. But it feels like as we move forward collectively, there's a need for more community and joining community and being with like-minded people and feeling inspired and empowered by other people in this space. And using my mediumship circle as an example, we all make each other's readings better. Just by being in each other's energy, we all sort of power and light each other up. And it's like, woo, a lightning bolt, and we can just connect with spirit even easier. And when I've done magic rituals with other people, friends, the message I get over and over is that our energy is stronger together, that we all empower each other's intentions, and that magic, although it can be a solo thing, is most powerful within the group, because that's how we were originally designed and how we used to do it before magic was demonized and seen as a bad thing. It was a community activity. It was as normal as breathing. And I know I've said this message before. We've had more lifetimes where we were magical than not. And that if you were not connected to spirit and the land and higher consciousness, it was a sign of spiritual sickness in the early before times when we were super connected to the land. So that's what I get intuitively about this. And the next phase of the waking of the witch, the next phase of more of us coming into our empowered energy, mind, body, and soul, is finding aligned community and finding groups to work with and finding people that we can be our full selves with and that we can grow spiritually with and that we can support in each other's magical practices. And so that is so beautiful. And I know there's a lot out there. I know there's moon circles and covens and book clubs and activist circles, whatever it is that resonates with you, whatever type of witchy person you are, whether you're an astrology witch, whether you're an animal witch, whether you're a green witch, a kitchen witch, a divining witch, whatever you are, find people that you can collaborate with and create community with and feel strong with, because there is this stronger together message, and that everything in this society tries to isolate us and make us feel alone. And you're really not alone, because there are so many people who believe the same things as you, feel exactly how you feel, and there needs to be more connection. And even just the act of putting yourself out there and meeting more aligned community members and doing your magical practices or spiritual practices in being vulnerable in including other people or working with other people, there's an element of witch wound healing just within the act of that vulnerability and trust. And who knows what surprises and magic and momentum that will lead to. But it feels exciting. It feels really exciting when I tap into that. The last thing I'll say about the angel messages is I got this message of don't suffer in silence. And it kind of piggybacks off of that message of community and aligned action and sharing your magic with other people. But I feel like so many of us might be programmed to go through really tough times and suffer in silence, to not talk about what we're going through, to feel like we're a burden if we talk about what we're going through, to feel like we have to be isolated or on our own. And the big message here is do not suffer in silence, because you're not alone. Share your voice, share your truth, and let it all out so it doesn't live on within you. It's interesting because I was in a client session earlier today where a client felt very disconnected from their heart. And when I tuned into it, I saw her inner child basically showing me that both of her parents did not encourage her to feel her feelings. And they basically would go through horrible things or tragic things or difficult things as a family and be like, everything's fine, nothing's wrong. And they would deny things. And so now here she is as an adult without the toolbox to really articulate deeper things, feel deeper things. She knows they're there and she's actively working through it. But it's so important to voice the things that are difficult, because I feel like sometimes we try to gaslight our own inner child. Like, our inner child is our link to humanity. And I always say our inner child is a spirit guide that is like our link to remembering who our true essence of humanity is. And when we tell our inner child, we're okay, it's okay, I'm going to go to work, everything's fine, but they just experience something so heartbreaking or something so difficult or something so traumatizing, that's creating a disconnect from your truth. And this happened when my mom passed, where I just wanted to be okay and I wanted to be productive and I was ready to skip to the part where I was happy again. And I told my inner child, like, no, 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 we're okay. We're okay. Just don't even think about her. And my inner child said, all I want is for you to cry with me. This is sad. Why aren't you crying with me? So all that is this long-winded thing to say. Feel your feelings, speak your feelings, don't bottle them up, don't feel like you're alone, and know that as soon as you're vulnerable enough to open the conversation, someone else who is suffering in silence will be so happy that you did, because it also gives them an invitation to share their deeper truth. So that's a big part of the message too, is like, we're all going through this really intense time energetically on planet Earth where there's a lot of moving parts, and it's more important than ever for us to find community, for us to share our voice, for us to be honest, and for us to resist the impulse to isolate, but to instead break through that and let ourselves be loved fully in community and to realize that we're not alone. So I did have two spirits actually coming through today. This was an interesting one. And I'm going to put a little bit of a trigger warning before this. I've never done that before, but this felt like kind of a sinister passing. This feels full of grief. And I also feel like there might be something of a murder case or unsolved element of this passing. And so I felt two children stepping up to me in spirit, a boy and a girl, and they felt around 12. I would say 11 or 12. And they felt like brother and sister to me. And I would have even said they were twins. I wouldn't be surprised if they were twins. And if they aren't twins, then they would have been right around a year apart, like Irish twins, I think it's called, or something like that, where it's like they either were super close in age and everyone basically treated them like twins, or they were actually twins. I saw a connection to them and learning to surf and enjoying being on the water. And I saw them now in spirit standing with their paternal grandmother, and that the paternal grandmother was like protectively holding on to them in spirit. I felt blunt head trauma. I felt getting hit on the head. And then I felt an element of having to hide, feeling like you had to hide and they couldn't cry out. There's something about being muffled or tape over their mouth and like they wanted to scream, they wanted to cry for help and they couldn't. And I do feel like there's a connection to the woods and wilderness. And I do think that there's foul play. And I do think that there's something about them being hidden and muffled and can't cry for help. Ooh. And as I talk about this, I feel so much grief around this. And I feel like their parents were searching for them night and day. I feel like there is still this unresolved trauma and grief and horror at the situation for the family. And I feel like the person listening to this podcast would either be a friend of the family or an aunt or somebody, not the exact parents, but on the periphery is the feeling that I get. But if it's the parents listening, which I don't feel it is, but if it is, I am so sorry. So as I feel into this, oh man, there's the first and foremost message of please don't fight each other. Because I feel like this trauma has led to some family members trying to blame each other and has led to a lot of pain and a lot of isolation and just a lot of grief, of course. And there's one message here of like, it was nobody's fault. Don't take the blame. Don't let yourself go down this path of turning the grief into destructive energy. Just know that it wasn't your fault and that they in spirit don't see it as your fault. And I see the initial J. So this might be for somebody with a J name. One of the kids might have had a J name, but I see the initial J. And so these kids come in today with a message about being their voice, about seeing crimes or witnessing injustices or dark things, evil acts in the world, and being the voice for those in spirit who cannot share in the way that we can here in the physical world. And so it's sort of like taking that anger, that pain, and that rage and transforming it into justice, awareness, recognition, and picking up the ball of tragedy and moving it forward to protect someone else. And they said, beautiful new flowers of life bloom from the seeds of your truth. And so it's like their physical death, because remember, the spirit lives on. Their physical death can lead to more life if the truth is shared, if the recognition is shared, if the awareness is shared. And so it feels very important for this message of sharing your voice and speaking up about injustice. And like I said, I'm not surprised this is the message that comes on the heels of the conversation I had with Sarah. And so there can be a lot of hidden things, a lot of difficult things, a lot of really evil, dark parts of humanity that the light doesn't get shined on. But that's the plea of these two kids in spirit. Is protect the innocent, protect the voiceless, be their voice. And you don't even understand yet the ripple effects of good that is doing and how many lives you're saving. And as I was getting their messages, I felt a similar message from our ancestors collectively that, you know, so many of us have traumatic events in our lineage. So many of us have people who were taken advantage of, who were hurt and who were harmed by harmful systems or people. And that we, as their ancestors here and now in a physical body, we can help tell their story, whether it's through writing or filmmaking or protesting or speaking or social media or getting awareness. It's very important, if you feel that call, to run with it, because chances are your ancestors are working with you and through you. Chances are that part of your spirit team, if you feel this call to make the world a better place, that's not an accident, and you have 100 people in spirit cheering you on as you do that. So that's the other part of this message, is like whatever lights your heart on fire, because there's so much injustice in the world. We can't all get scattered trying to fix everything. But if you really dedicate yourself to like 1 to 3 things in your lifetime, depending, and maybe you're a superhuman and can do all the things. But if you can really dedicate yourself to either something that you have experienced and want to speak out on, something that has happened in your lineage to an ancestor, something that you feel just morally very moved by, and that's what you want to protect or sort of fight for or condemn, commit to that and know that there's most likely not an accident why your heart is connected to that cause. And more likely than not, there's a karmic reason, an ancestral reason that it really resonates with you to do this activism work. And more likely than not, this isn't your first lifetime doing it. And it reminds me of a mediumship reading that I had where there was this grandmother that came through who was a bit straight-laced and had to be very sort of quote unquote demure. And she was saying to her granddaughter, like, do you know what I would have given to put my hair down and go dancing and to go to a festival like you are doing? Like, you are healing so many ancestral cycles of staying small, staying within the confines of just being like a wife and a mother, and nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with that if you don't have a choice, if you don't choose that, but it's forced upon you. And so us living our authentic, powerful lives already is a form of ancestral healing, but us moving the ball forward in ways that help heal the earth, our ancestors are also cheering that on. Our ancestors see that, and chances are it's a similar vein to what maybe they didn't have access to or resources for or wish that they could have done while they were here. So although this is a very intense time on planet Earth, it's also a very privileged time compared to our ancestors for a lot of us. Not everywhere in the world, but for a lot of us, it's a very privileged time just with our ability to have food, shelter, clothing, etc., compared to other time periods in history. And so it's easy to get into this narrative of powerlessness and be like, we have no power, we can't change anything. But actually, we really do. And we are moderately set up for success with the tools in our toolbox in this modern day and age. So your ancestors are cheering you on. Be the voice for the voiceless. And continue to create aligned community that supports you and resonates with you and helps empower your intentions and manifestations, both on a micro and a macro level. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week. Please continue to share the podcast. Please continue to send your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and you will be entered to win a free angel reading with me, as well as receive a downloadable angelic meditation instantly to your inbox as a thank you. And I'm just so grateful for all the support of the podcast. Much, much love, everyone.